everybody. It's so nice to see you guys. All the shining happy faces. How are you today? We've got BJ Harrison with us, and I'm very, very excited because we purposefully left all the exciting questions out before the call so that you will all be privy to all BJ's deep, dark secrets as soon as I promise nothing really scary, I swear. Just wait for the 45-minute mark. That's when they always spill the beans. Okay, so BJ, you mentioned something before the call, and now introduction-wise, BJ runs a podcast, which is fascinating. He's multifaceted and multi-talented. I mean, he's got the podcast. If you look at his website, he's got the design background, obviously. You've got a really unique style of your own. He's done millions of books, like 500 zillion or something, which is like, to a narrator like me that's still at that, like, you know, when you get to the point where you're like almost at 150 and you're like, you know, the guy delivers your groceries and I'm like, hi, yes, my name's Daniela. I've got almost 150 audiobooks. It's like that day Amazon Audible started like taking them off randomly because of a technical error. Oh, yeah. Narrators like me almost had a stroke. But I think at the point that you're at, the meaning changes, and I'd like to delve into that a little bit as well. But so can we start, please, BJ, with your journey and with how you started? And also, I'm really interested because in this day and age, it feels like, and I've recently had to say on Facebook, look, I can't do so much of this. I'm getting paranoid and crazy. I'm becoming like a nutcase with all the Facebook and social media. Everyone is my friend, and I do love them, but you start to lose kind of touch with, and you said that you didn't have that much interaction with other narrators when you started. So I'm fascinated by what that looks like and when you started and what made you start and what you're back. And also first, I want to hear about the Muppet thing.
The Muppet thing.
Yes. So let's start with Muppets and then move on to working in a bubble in the beginning.
That's a really good place to start. I was like 7, and
yes.
there was a neighborhood talent show, and you know, everyone gets up and plays the piano and whatever else. And of course, me being insane, I got up and I was like, I'm going to do Muppet impressions because I'm so awesome at that. So I got up there and I killed it. I'm sorry, I did a really good job.
I love that you say that, though. I love that because but that childhood pride is a big deal, and I think it's a crucial part of an artist's mentality.
Yeah, I don't know where I kept that confidence back then. I don't know where that came from because I just thought I could just do anything. Because I was 8 and I was just like a little boy, you know, and I was up there and I loved the Muppets. I loved all the different voices. I loved all of the classic Disney shows. I was always listening to all the different voices and seeing who did the different ones and everything like that. And so I just jumped up there and did it, and it was great. By the time I got to Animal, they were rolling in the aisles.
So, did you take it any further and do it any other places, or just like bug your family with Muppet impressions all the time?
No, I just tortured my siblings and my parents. For years. They were just so kind of put up with me.
How long did you hold on to that confidence?
Oh, I don't know. That's hard to put because we all get older, and probably, I don't know, because there is that kind of confidence that drives you. I mean, that's actually something like through my career I've had to balance and realize, okay, you need to really become more self-aware. You need to look at yourself and honestly try and say, okay, I know you've got the confidence, but are you really that adept at what you're doing? Are you really that competent in what you do?
But how, I'm curious, that's a really timely thing you said there, because I'm going through that same thing, but I'm thinking, because I've tried to do that from external input my whole life, self-help books, looking at other people, what do they think? And for the first time in my life, I'm asking, what do I think? So when you mean self-aware, do you mean, does BJ think he's as good as he thinks he is, or do other people think it?
Well, it's exactly. I mean, it's like when I first started, I thought I was awesome. I thought I was just nailing it. Oh, I was killing it. Well, I
How
mean,
long ago was this? When did you first start?
well, I mean, just to set it all up, I guess. I didn't read very well as a kid. As that 8-year-old, I kind of plateaued around choose your own adventure books, Encyclopedia Brown kind of thing. I didn't, I couldn't like get to that next level.
Yeah.
So I
Yeah.
had negative experiences in high school when it's like, okay, now we need to read big people stuff, and I just couldn't do it. And so I was there, and then one day I heard, when I was in my 20s, I heard a recording of Basil Rathbone reading The Cask of Amontillado and The Pit and the Pendulum, and I'm getting chills talking about it right now. That recording changed my life because it combined the acting and the literature, which was closed to me. I wanted to read all of these amazing stories. I wanted to really understand the original Count of Monte Cristo and the original Three Musketeers and all. I wanted all of that stuff, but I couldn't do it. But audiobooks opened that up for me. And so I listened to that, and I just became ravenous about audiobooks. I was in my 20s, I was already married, and so I was a scenic artist all day long for television and film and whatever.
I knew you were an artist. Your website is like, go ahead,
well,
sorry.
and so that job was conducive to me listening to audiobooks all day long. And so every day, literally every day for like 15 years, while I was working on the sets or whatever, I would listen to all of these stories that I had wanted to listen to my whole life. And I developed an ear for what makes a good audiobook, what were my favorite narrators, what were my favorite writers, all of that stuff. And it just opened everything up. And it was, so that's how I started. And then in 2007, a friend of mine told me about podcasting. He's like, dude,
Wait. So you're listening to audiobooks. I don't want to skip a bit.
No,
what did you start podcasting before you started narrating, or did you start narrating before podcasting?
The narration was the podcasting. That's how it started.
Oh, it was at the same time.
That is
okay. Go ahead.
That's how I got any recognition at all. So this is back in 2007 when there's like, 4 podcasts or something like that. Nobody's doing it yet. So my friend had a triathlon podcast, and it just jumped to the top of the charts. And he's very, very good at that kind of thing. But I thought, my gosh, this new podcasting technology, how cool would it be to present something for people like me, who maybe don't know audiobooks, maybe don't know the classics, maybe have a hard time reading, maybe wouldn't run into all of these amazing authors. How cool would it be to create something for people like me, basically, stuff that I would like to listen to? And so I did. I borrowed a computer. I didn't even have a computer. I borrowed a computer. I didn't have the internet in my home. I had to use the internet in the shop to post my first few episodes. And I used Audacity, free, software to record it all. And I did 3 episodes. I created the Classic Tales podcast, and I put it up online. Awesome. Great. Who's going to do it? My mom listened to a few. I was thrilled.
Were they all public domain books?
Yep, they're all public domain. Everything's classics. So I did that, and then Apple was like, there's something that's noteworthy out of the dearth of nothing out here. Here's something we can point at. So they were nice enough to feature me on their new and notable main podcasts page. Like,
what were you thinking at this point? Because you weren't unhappy with your job at the time, obviously, right?
Oh, but that was, yeah.
But did you feel, this is something I've wanted my whole life, I can't believe it's happening?
I had no expectations, because I didn't know, I don't have a degree in theater. I don't have a degree in acting. I mean, I took like I wasn't trained, and I just loved it. I did it I came from a place of just, whatever, this is something, we'll see what happens. I'll just put it up there. If somebody likes it, great. If not, I was anticipating like, it'll probably get like, I'll get tired after a month and then stop. And so they featured me, and then I was like, oh, and then it got more and more downloads and stuff. And I was kind of like, okay, I started doing them every week instead of every 2 weeks. And by the time I started climbing the podcast charts, it was insane. And so I talked as like, I was like the top arts podcast in all of iTunes. And then I was like, and then I rose up to like the main. Were
you making money, if you don't mind me asking? Like at this time, could you make money off of podcasts?
No, that was the thing. It was like, I had all this success and everything, but I didn't know how to monetize it. And nobody else did either. Because I would approach marketing companies and everything else. They're like, that's great. Where are they? What's the demographics of your audience? How do you know? They're also asking all these questions. I don't know. So I think I topped off as the number 3 podcast overall, right behind This American Life when I did The Pit and the Pin.
Oh my God.
Then
that's huge. And you still didn't get what a big deal that was.
That was the thing. I had all of these things. I had like thousands of downloads for all of these shows, but I didn't know what to do with it. I think Heart of Darkness got like 100,000 downloads for one episode. It was insanity. But again, there wasn't anything else really to listen to at that time. I mean, there weren't a lot of.
But don't qualify it. 100,000 people aren't going to listen to crap just because there's no other crap out there. Yeah. Right. And the other thing, and I think this as a narrator, when I look at an total of small fry, the YouTube channel compared to, but I kept getting messages from YouTube saying, oh, now that you're an influencer, I'm like, oh, hold on. And I looked at like the things, the views. Do you not stop? And I think every narrator should stop and think, do you not stop and think 100,000 people listened to me in this world?
I know, I cannot comprehend it, because at the time I remember my brother was like, that's like filling up the stadium with people who are listening to you. He was trying to quantify it for me, and I was like,
and out of those people, what do you want to bet you've changed someone's life? Because I can tell you, I listened to an audiobook when my beloved pet died the whole time, because I couldn't stand that moment. And I had an audiobook in my ear, taking my mind out. I listened to an audiobook when I was diagnosed with a brain tumor for like the 4 days before. I remember the audiobook. I don't remember the diagnosis or that whole thing. And I know so many people that have reached out and said they're listening to this. So if you've had 100,000 people, what do you think the odds are? How many people do you think you've been with at times that they've desperately needed someone? I think it's brilliant. Well, and you did it for free at the time.
Oh, yeah. Well, I mean, and I'm still doing it for free. If people want to listen to the podcast, it's going to always be free, because that's the whole point, is introducing folks to stuff they otherwise wouldn't run across. And that's been, it's just so rewarding, because it's worked. You know, people have gotten messages from folks who are like, you know, I never would have touched Pride and Prejudice. I've heard about it. I'm too cool. I would never touch that thing. But they listened to my version because, for whatever reason, and they were like, okay, I love it. It's one of my favorite books now.
And it can change someone's life. Yeah. You've changed lives.
Again,
okay. So, I don't know. When did you go? Did you make a transition and go, hold on, I can do audiobooks now on Audible and make money from this as well? Did you leave the scenic design? Can you tell that I don't know what scenic design actually is?
It's okay. So what my job was, for example, I was the head sculptor for, this is my biggest claim to fame. I was head sculptor for the film 127 Hours with the guy who got his arm off. There aren't many big notable, I live in Utah, so there aren't many big notable shows that come through here, but I was able to get on that one. So like my job for that one was to construct that slot canyon 3 times on stage. So I had to like create all of the contours of the actual canyon again, and then they'd roll the rock down and he'd get his arm trapped, and then we'd do it again.
Oh, okay, I get it.
So that's what I would do. And then, so sometimes I would be the sculptor, where I would like, you know, carve a big hot dog man or something for a set, or I did an MTV spaceman who had to jump, you know, that kind of thing. Or I would do the or I'd paint the sets where I would just, I know how to make things look ugly and old and tired when they're just freshly built, kind of thing. So
at some point, did you leave that to do audiobooks full? I'm jumping ahead too fast. Okay, so you're doing the podcast. Apple loves you. You're the bomb. You're right behind This American Life. You're flying high, and you're not making a pittance. So you're still doing two jobs. Yeah. So where do you go from there?
I did 2 jobs for a long time, but the transition over was I got contacted from an executive from iTunes. And then from Audible also. They were both like, dude, let's join forces. I mean, Audible was like, you're awesome. What do you have? iTunes itself, Apple was like, what do you have coming up? And I told them about some of my ideas for cool books that I could do. And that kind of didn't go anywhere. But with Apple, or with Audible rather, they were like, we have a new program we're thinking about starting up, and we want to kind of test the waters with you. We're looking for people with home studios. So can we give you an audiobook? You record it in your home studio. We know that it's good. And then you then go ahead and we'll hire you like this remotely. Is that a cool thing to do? Can we try that?
What year was this?
It was right before ACX. It was like a year before ACX. I don't know exactly when it was.
So you're one of those veteran guys we hear about that are in the legends,
Oh, I'm no legend. No, none of that. But
well, no, but the handful of narrators that were around before ACX and like they met people and people reached out to them and there was still kind of a hot commodity, not like one of 8 zillion people.
It was a really right time in the right place. I mean, I was in the right time to start the podcast. I was in the right time to be at that point when ACX was opening up. It was really something like that.
But you put yourself in those places.
I had to create the work. Nothing was happening. I had to create it all. But so then that happened. They gave me a few, and then I was on the phone call when the big phone call when they announced to all of the publishers and everything that like what ACX was, and we're going to do a pilot program, and we're going to have a few people audition, and here's how it's going to work and everything. They laid it all out, and but then I was one of their beta people where I auditioned, and that was the only place I knew how to get work for so long, was ACX, because I started getting work from them. And then eventually, but a lot of times I was recording audiobooks and doing 12 hours on set at the same time. And so
and still doing the podcast.
I was famous for not sleeping.
And what genre were you kind of doing on ACX? Were you mixing it up because you were doing classics on the podcast? Were you doing something different on ACX, or?
ACX was kind of like I would just kind of get whatever came along. I mean, because I've been a freelancer my whole life, whether it be in film or whatever. And so one thing I learned early on was like, it's not the perfect show that comes along and then you can do it. Utah, what show is here this month? Can I work on it? So I was just kind of like, had that attitude of, does this work? Can I do it well? Okay, well, let me see if I can get it. So I did everything from romance to techno thrillers, science fiction, fantasy, because I just kind of have a range, a pretty wide range. And so I was able to adapt to, one of my first ones on ACX, I remember, was a horror thing, but I had to do a whole bunch of big, huge fantasy voices kind of thing, because it was like but then I also got hired as to do some romance, and then it's like, I do paranormal romantic comedy is like my favorite thing. If that's
okay, so you're working 3 jobs now: ACX, the podcast, and the scenic design, and you're not sleeping. How pleased was your wife about all that?
My wife is amazing. I am so lucky to have who I have as a partner, because she grew up, she was actually, her dad was a designer. She grew up in the entertainment business. And so she was used to her dad going from job to job to job. Of course, he's a scenic designer. And so he's really, really good. He like designed Reagan's inaugural ball and like the Donnie and Marie show for all those years and stuff.
Oh, wow. So she probably respects and appreciates your work ethic and the fact you chase your creativity.
and she was not afraid to not have insurance, and she got it when the ups and downs happened and stuff like that, and to struggle and to all of that. This was all, it wasn't different for her, it was normal. The different for her would be to be locked into a job where I was in a cubicle and answered to somebody else to know when I could have time off for a vacation. That was different for her. So I would not be doing this at all if it wasn't for that support system, for sure. Yeah. And so
but what, you just eventually thought, I have to sleep?
Eventually what happened was the scenery work dried up. I got
when was this? What time was this?
This was about 7 years ago, about 2013 or so. It just got to a point where I had a harder time getting scenery work, and I had three jobs lined up, and they just went flat. And I was on vacation with my family at Disneyland at the time, and I got word, the next 3 things you're going to do, they're all gone, and that's it. So I came home and I was like, okay, I'm just going to audition for everything on ACX that I can possibly do. And so I did, and we were able to make it work. I was lucky enough to book the work. And, but again, that was the only place I knew how to get work. I didn't know about publishers or any sort of network or community or anything like this. It was just, this is what happened to me. I started a podcast, people reached out, I just did ACX, and I was lucky enough and fortunate enough to have people go, okay, you can play.
So at what point did you start thinking about networking?
That was like only a handful. That was like 2 or 3 years ago, is it?
Because everyone knows you. Well, I think maybe it's just your history of hard work. You don't think they do, but they do. They're sending messages waiting for your call. They're happy you're going to be on. And I do a lot of calls, and the interest was high for your calls. So you're not as invisible as you think you are.
That's wonderful news. Who doesn't want to hear that? That's awesome. But the problem is on my end, because I didn't do any of that. I mean, but I reached out to one of my proofer. So I have a proofer that I'd kind of trained over the years, because he started with my podcast, and then as I did more and more ACX work, I had him do that and stuff. So he'd done 100 or 200 books, and he reached out to Tantor and started building his own proofing business.
Wow.
And so he got it. He was the one who was smart enough to figure out that there was a Utah audiobook narrators and audio professionals group on Facebook, and they meet every month to like have lunch and stuff. And at the time he said, BJ, dude, you should be in here, right? Because there's like a handful of people who do this in the state, so come on. And at the time and so I went to my first one, and I met Nancy Peterson, and at the time she had just won her Audie. And so I was like, oh my gosh, and this whole world of friends opened up to me that I didn't even know, was there. And so suddenly, for the first time ever, I could talk shop. I could talk about what it's like to do character voices, and what my studio is like, and how I built my studio, and what kind of mics I use. I couldn't do that forever. There was nobody to talk to. So that's how that opened up. And I'm so thankful to my little group of friends in Utah. I mean, Nancy Peterson,
Do you think that's changed the trajectory of your career in a significant way, or do you think it doesn't make any difference at all?
That made all the difference in my career. Because of that group, I was persuaded to look at training. I got in with Sean Pratt and did all of his stuff, and that set me off because even though I've been doing it for 10 years, there were some fundamentals, there were some things that the industry was doing that I just didn't know about, ways to communicate, ways to deliver, all of that stuff. And also how to narrate nonfiction appropriately I just didn't know. And so they got me off with that. They told me about APAC. I didn't even know what that was.
Have you been to APAC now?
No, I don't travel well, so I stay here. But I did it virtually this year for the first time.
I know, me too. Wasn't it fabulous? I know I'm the only one that's going to be disappointed when everyone goes back to their stupid hugging.
Well, I'll be there. I don't know when I'll be able to go, but I was thrilled to learn about that, and I've been able to take Johnny Heller and Scott Brick's, business seminars and all of these things I didn't even know about. But that all happened because of networking and yeah, for me, it's been all virtual. I've met my Utah folks, but anybody other than that, I haven't physically met. But and also another point, they helped me to know how to approach publishers and people like that, which is where I get most of my work from now. So yeah, just that little nucleus of friends has helped me immensely. I mean,
yeah, I love that. I love the word that keeps coming to mind is thoughtful, that you just, and you don't seem to lead with your ego. You seem to just lead with open curiosity, which is, I think, a really good trait. That's what all the self-help books tell us we should do.
I have a self-help book myself. It's called Ego is the Enemy, and it is.
Yeah.
But that doesn't just happen. I've had to beat that thing down for years, because when you don't know what you're doing, like when I started, and then you get all of this incredible enthusiasm and everything, oh, the ego goes through the roof, but the skill set's still there. You're not that great. You just think you are. And so it's taken a while to manage that. So I'm thrilled that's what you're seeing. That was not always the case, but it should have been. So,
you know what's funny? People don't understand. They always, I notice, stop listening when I get to this part of it. I don't read my reviews. I have a partner that checks them like every month or so, and I check theirs. And if there's anything that in our narration that's a theme that we need to know about, we tell each other. And somebody mentioned on APAC, also tell each other the good stuff. But the thing is I'm not just not reading my reviews for the bad things. I'm not reading them because for the good things either, because I think that the praise can be just as harmful as the criticism, because it's all you chasing something outside instead of doing the work and letting the work inform how you feel. And you probably have a built-in safety net there because you do that podcast. So your work is in your face. You've got an automatic feedback loop. How often do you do the podcast? Like, say, a week?
Every week.
Every week. And how much time do you spend on it?
I probably spend about 8 hours or so. I mean, it depends, but 8 to 10 hours a week. Maybe sometimes more, sometimes less. That sounds high. It's probably more like 6, probably.
But you've got an automatic feedback loop, and you've also got accountability because you've got people expecting you to do it. So you are literally practicing your craft and facing your skills in a consistent, regular practice. That's brilliant.
Yeah, to build in that kind of accountability, that kind of, need for consistency.
Yeah.
And need for, because I find all of the stuff. I mean, it's anyway, yeah, it's been a really positive thing, because that's how I've been able to get so many things under my belt, is forcing me to do it every week, whether I'm in a good mood, whether I want to do it, whether I don't want to do it, whether we're going on vacation, I got to do 2 this week, or whatever. So it's been hard, but it's been really good to kind of have that thing to force me to do it when it's not super convenient.
But how do you make yourself, for instance, I'm re-listening because I listened the first time and decided to not follow it, to that book by Mel Robbins, that 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, and then jump out. Have you heard of that book?
No.
She like, yeah, you count down, and then, like, if you want to make yourself do something, can't remember the name of the book. I think it's like 5, 4, 3, 2, 1 or something, but it's the 5-second rule, 5-minute rule, 5-second rule, something, whatever. The theory is you keep hitting the snooze button in the morning. You don't let yourself have any excuses. You don't hit the snooze button. You immediately say 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, feet on the ground, you're up. You just take the action before your mind has time, because it takes 5 seconds for your mind to convince you you don't want to do something.
Right.
And I did it I started listening and I did it yesterday, and I had a brilliant day. I did, because I redid all the work I'd accidentally deleted the day before and all of yesterday's work. I did everything perfectly. And then today I slept till 1 in the afternoon. That snooze button didn't just get hit, the phone got thrown across the room. I don't know where it is to this day. So how are you normally just a consistent person? Do you have a practice that, besides accountability of the podcast, because you get an awful lot done? So do you have a conversation with yourself? How do you talk to yourself about what you have to get done? Do you not ever want to stay up till 3 a.m. binge watching those ones with the canned laughter, the American sitcoms, and then not wake up? I'm asking for a friend, obviously.
Well, I mean, I've been there and I do that and I love those things. And I've been there at 3, I'm not proud. But I think that as far as my work ethic goes, I think that was kind of beaten into me at an early age, because in my culture, I was raised Mormon, and I was not Mormon now, but I was. And we were kind of encouraged or pressured to get married extremely early in our lives. And so I got married very early. And so I was kind of thrown off the deep end and instantly had to, at age, really young, 21, provide for a family at that age with like.
Wow. So you grew up fast.
I had to. Exactly. I had to. And so we had to, and then we started having kids. And so it was like that option of sleeping in or going in late or anything I'm not that, I mean, it sounds impressive, all the stuff that I've done, but I'm not the sharpest tool in the shed. I don't have a whole bunch of incredible, amazing things that I can do, especially when I was just a kid, back when I was 21. And so I had to make every job that I had count. So I just had to learn early to get up at 5 or 4 or whatever it was and go do the crappy job that I didn't want to do. And
I think do you know what count. I think part of your work ethic might be that you're humble, and I would maybe look into that I'm not the sharpest tool in the shed thing and re-examine it.
Well, anyway, I think that,
I mean, you don't want to go into ego. You don't want to go into ego, right? But
no. That's the balancing act. I mean, it really is a balancing act. You have to be confident enough to want to get stuff done and put yourself out there, but still be humble enough to make sure that you don't build the ego to your detriment. It's a constant balancing act that I anticipate I'll be balancing till I die, probably.
I think we can be, because I used to feel like that. I don't want to give myself credit because, I was raised, let the quiet people talk. And I've had feedback that possibly what was the quote? Suck all the air out of the room. But I have a thought about that, and I think it kind of pertains to you quite a lot, is that you can allow me, all of us, can allow ourselves to feel our wonderfulness. Like, I think you're brilliant, and I've only been talking to you for 34 minutes, but look at what you've done, and look at the way you've approached it, and look at the consideration and thought you've put into your decisions, and you've just kind of navigated the loops of life in a very successful way. And you've come across barriers that, like I've come across, I'm still butting my head against. And I do think I'm the sharpest tool in the shed, actually. And you've come across barriers, and I'm not going to apologize for that anymore, because you can be brilliant. Look at what you've done. Oh, yeah. But that doesn't take away from anyone else, and it doesn't make you egotistical, as long as you help other people be brilliant and think everyone's brilliant just like you. I think we should all be more brilliant.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And we shouldn't wait for people to say, you can go ahead and try this. You can do it. Or ask a question to do it. Chase your dreams. Do it. Go for it. Don't wait for somebody to say, okay, now you can come to the party. Just show up.
And you were brave. Did you ever have self-doubt when you took all those steps, or was it just because you didn't consider the magnitude of what you were doing? Because you were great.
I didn't know what I was doing. I didn't consider the magnitude that I was doing. I needed way more of that. Maybe you should take a step back, BJ, and think about what you're doing, because but yeah.
I mean, really, would you take back any of it?
I mean, any of it. Well, what do you mean?
Anything. Anything. I love that movie Jim Carrey does, The Yes Man, or whatever that movie is.
Mm-hmm.
I don't quite have the nerve to do that. I haven't even barely left my house in a year, so I'm probably not going to be running out saying yes to everyone. But you know that, like, I'd always rather say yes than say no. And it seems that you do that. And if you were a person that didn't, I mean, what is it they say? People dying never regret the things they did. They always regret the things they didn't do.
Yeah.
You've done it all.
I think one thing that's helped is I've learned, I wasn't always like this. I wasn't always like this at all. But I've learned how to cope with failure a lot. I mean, now we're talking about all the great things I've done, but what's unsaid is all of the things that failed. And that's, I don't know, every year we do the birthday game, you know, where we go around and the kids and whoever's in our family, we say, like, the thing that we love about the person whose birthday it is, you know, we say. That's one thing that we do. Yeah. And so this
we
year,
never did that. We just got to choose what we wanted for dinner.
Well, again, that's my wife putting that out there and creating that culture. She's amazing.
Oh, I love your wife. That's lovely.
Oh, you guys will get along great. But this year, when it was my birthday, my daughter was like, one thing I love about Dad is that he's not afraid to try things and just have them not work out. He's willing to just have it be out there and have it just not work. And then he's like, that's okay, let's try again. So that's how I am now. But see, that's the thing. I've just haven't been, I've done tons of things that have failed. I tried to have a patent. I've taught myself how to file for a patent and it didn't work. And I've moved on and I'm honestly okay with that. But there's lots of things like that. I tried to monetize the podcast in a whole bunch of different ways. That didn't work. I had a whole bunch of different shopping carts and websites and all sorts of different things. And they all just failed. I tried to do merchandising, all sorts of things. So many failures. So, but
that's what the self-help books say, that you have to fail to succeed.
But here's the thing. Then that's exactly true.
Yeah.
Once you become okay with the word failure and the concept of failure, once you're okay with that, there's nothing to stop you.
Yeah.
There's nothing in your way anymore. You've just gotten rid of all that.
Because and it's that big thing. What would you do today if you knew you couldn't fail? What would you do if you knew it would work out well? And it's like, you do a million things. I'd do way more than just like wait for my grocery delivery and whine a bit. Mm-hmm. You know, you would do amazing things, wouldn't you?
Well, the thing is, bundled in that is like, well, why is it so bad if it fails? That's still a win. If you try something and it's wonderful and personal and you put it out there and it doesn't work out, that's still a win. You still created something. You still learned something. You learned what you need to learn. That's all positive stuff. So
it's our ego. And our ego's there for a good reason. It's trying to save us from the big bad monsters that are going to kill us if anything changes. So it's memorizing every little thing we've ever done in our life and going, okay, we won't do that again. But you know, it's, what is it? I heard this somewhere, I can't get it out of my head. The itty bitty shitty committee in our head. I can't get that out of my mind, because that's what it is, isn't it? Trying to keep you safe.
Yeah, it's like, okay, no bears are coming. I'm good. Thanks. I'm not worried about that. We're good. I'm not worried about the tiger going to come eat me. Lay off, you know? So.
Yeah, that's pretty much it. I love that. And also, if you think about what you just said, though, that's, I think, aside from all the tragedies and everything, I think that right there is what made it the hardest in the last, what we all went through, the world went through in the last year, is because all the work saying, okay, there's no bears, I'm going to be fine. Suddenly it felt like there was, all bets were off, and all the things that we tried to say weren't going to happen.
Right.
You know, it's like your parents telling you, don't worry, honey, there's no monster under your bed. The last year, I think we all had a rude wake up. We were like, crap, there is a monster under the bed, actually.
Yeah, yeah. And the monster is worse than you ever told me about.
Yeah.
I was not ready for this monster. There were no plans. So yeah, and the longevity, the way that it just kept and keeps going and going and going, and wearing with no end in sight. And then of course, just thinking like, where is the end? I mean, first we know where it is now because we have vaccinations in the world now, but for a while everything was on fire for like ever. So it was really hard to come through.
It's made us strong. Think about how strong, because now what Alice in Wonderland falling, I don't know if you know classics, Alice in Wonderland, and she's talking to her aunt or something, and after this I won't think anything of falling off the roof. You know what I mean? It's like,
yeah,
what we thought was the worst has happened. Now we're really strong.
Yeah, and that's managing that failure, not letting that, being afraid of that failure push down your ego. That's a good thing. That's really good. Yeah, having left a system that really kind of, well, it made the straight white man the biggest. You want to talk about sucking the air out of a room? Oh, geez, that's all I did. That's all I knew. So, so it was like I had this personal ego to manage, but then like I had this that being put upon me on top of that, making it worse. You're making it worse. So
and we all have to find it. We all have to navigate this because it's going to be a new world. And I like this new world. It's going to, I don't like the loss. I've got issues with, you know, the people that are gone and everything, but I like the new world whereas sometimes I get a little annoyed because, God, really, I'm not allowed to say this. It's like, I don't, you know, you're navigating like an entire new politically correct world. But the thing is, it's good. It's changing. And the things that were the nasty, horrible things that were under the surface are going to come out.
Yes.
And that's great. And that's what we do as a job, isn't it? Mm-hmm. We read the things, especially with the classics. I did some Edgar Allan Poe, and there's nothing like good Edgar Allan Poe or Frankenstein. And you can read it and you can pretend, oh, the language is beautifully constructed. But in the back of your mind, you kind of can't ignore how relevant it is. Right?
I love, that's one thing I just love about these stories is that they're so pertinent today. I mean, there's a short story by Jack London called The Scarlet Plague, and there's like 5 billionaires that own all of the governments in the world right now. And he wrote that like 100 years ago.
I've not read that one.
Yeah, stuff like that. Exactly. Stuff that we don't know about.
Yeah.
That's fascinating. That is so fun for me, is to go through and kind of mine around the public domain and find these gems that are so pertinent today. Yeah.
I just did Anthem. Anthem.
Yes. Wonderful.
Oh my God.
Right? Yeah. It's such a fun one to read and perform too. That's the way that she wrote that is just like it's yeah.
I loved every single second of it. Mm-hmm. Every single second. I mean, that's yeah. And that's what have you learned through all the classics? What has stuck with you the most? The biggest lesson you've learned in all the classics you've read and listened to and done?
The biggest thing that I've learned from, that's a great question. The biggest thing I think that I've learned is the joy, the absolute joy of discovering these things and having them touch you and to understand them in a way that is deeply personal. And then also being able to share that with somebody who can receive it in the same way. And I mean, this is something that was written 100 years ago or whatever. I didn't write it, but I found it and it means something to me and I can share it to somebody and they weren't looking for this, but they got it too and they understand it too. That sharing concept of service and helping somebody, and I mean, that makes it sound like something that it's not, but I mean, that concept of sharing something so wonderful, discovering it, that whole process is probably...
But it goes into their bones. It goes into their consciousness. The people that have never read Pride and Prejudice, it becomes part of their story. And once it becomes part of your story, you're the walking representative of that art. So it's true what they say about books. Books are access to immortality because we're getting to live thousands of lives other than our own and experience them. And your subconscious doesn't know the difference between what you're reading and experiencing and what's real life. So your subconscious, which is kind of a core. So you're changing and allowing other people to experience something that came from a writer millions of years ago. You're giving them immortality. You're giving yourself a million lives. It's a profound thing to do.
It's a wonderful thing to do. I mean, just the concept of what we do as audiobook narrators to tell someone's story. It's a great honor to be trusted with and to move the best parts of humanity forward, you know?
And the thing about narrators, if you've noticed, yes, okay, we have our moments where we get a little annoyed about stupid things and, you know, the technicalities, the social media, should this be edited this way? But if you ask any narrator and you really drill down, they'll go on about, I loved books when I was a kid, and this is my chance to, you know, how many industries do you find where somebody is just like, my why is the love I have for this job? I mean, wow.
Yeah. It's like I said, it's incredibly humbling. I can't, you know, when I first met my little group of Utah friends and met all of you amazing people, I was astounded, coming from the hard, usually abrasive world of doing scenery and carpentry and that kind of thing, to go from that to the world of being among creatives where like the guiding force, the motivating force is to share, is to create, is to make something, is to be the voice for somebody else and to perfect all of these amazing things and the craft behind it. It's like a whole world. And it's a wonderful, beautiful place.
And they reach their hand up. You go to a coach and a narration coach, and it's never just a money. I met with, I don't want to mispronounce her surname, Nicole Zanzarella, and before APAC, because I'm aware that I'm a complete nutcase. And I needed someone to just have a quick conversation with me. And I'd heard her on APAC, and she's doing some coaching. And she was kind. I mean, I can't remember specifically what was said on the call, but I remember after the call that I knew who I was, why I was here, I was okay. Because she genuinely tried to like help. And you always see that with Johnny and Sean, and they want to give you the gift of the ease that they've worked so hard to get. Yeah.
They want you to get better, faster. There's no spirit of holding back or withholding or, no, I have the secret sauce and that comes in, you know, course 5 or whatever. There's nothing like that. They're just, the spirit has been very, very giving. And I mean, it's really like a coach. It's wanting to help.
Because we know there's so much work out there and we just need to help each other. And also, because I was, you know, acting for years, and fellow actors, of course, there's that camaraderie because we're mostly out of work, like pretty much all our lives. But you get on a set and there's no doubt as to your place in the pecking order. Mm-hmm. There is no doubt. I mean, and you don't get out of that place. Do you know what I mean?
Oh, and it's rough. It's
Yeah.
The first time when I was like, first starting off, and I was like a swing gang, basically a furniture mover on set, and I went to the catering truck. We weren't usually there, but they were like extras were getting food. And we were like, okay, you guys have 5 minutes, go get something, go get a breakfast burrito from the catering truck or whatever. And we ran over there, and the caterers are like, oh, wait, you're from art department? Okay, extras, you need to wait. I need to take care of these guys first, and then I'll take care of you. And I was like, what is this? So even though I was on the low end of the pecking order, I wasn't that low end. It was like, you really,
the whole weird. Job is, and I mean, it's glory. And because the thing is, people that want it really, really want it. And you want it kind of for the honor of it and the craft and everything. But you forget, I remember I was in a prisoner, dodgy goth prisoner number 4 or something. But I didn't think to wear gloves. And I was standing in a prison yard for like 5 days in the freezing cold. And my hands literally turned blue, because I couldn't wear gloves because the first scene had been shot. Do you know what I mean? So you don't have that. We can complain about maybe having a chesty cough, but we're in our own home with our like dog snoring outside the door and like croissants at our beck and call. We've got it pretty good if we think about it.
It really, really, really is. It's better than I could have even anticipated or dreamed of. Back when I was starting my crappy little podcast on my Audacity equipment years ago, I never thought it would be. I'd be able to do this.
Do you still use Audacity?
No, I don't.
Yeah.
No, I use Pro Tools now. I took some training and learned how to. Because I figured several years ago, about 10 years ago, I figured like I want to do it on something that like the pros would do. I want to deliver that level of product. So I know it's overkill and everything like that, but
I started with Pro Tools, but only because I didn't know any better. And now I can't get rid of it, because when you've spent 5 years learning Pro Tools, there's no way you're going to like admit defeat. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Once Pro Tools, I think it was 11 came out, where they did it. We're talking full technically here, but I mean, once we could bounce something, not in real time, but actually do it offline.
Yeah.
That changed everything. I was like, I didn't have to wait for an hour for it to export just my weekly podcast. I could do it like that. So
yeah. The only thing I haven't started doing, and I'm okay, I'm just going to be candid. I've pretty much told everyone my life story, so there's nothing to hide, but I know what other people will say. I don't back up to cloud. I go every night and back up to a hard drive, because the few times I tried to get the cloud backup, I got very, very confused about where the actual files were, and I ended up deleting the wrong thing. And it looked like it was taking too much space, and I couldn't figure out what was where. So I've been very, very good and backed up to hard drive, except for 2 days ago when I got overzealous cleaning my computer and hit delete before I backed anything up. I misnamed a file and I deleted 2 finished hours of work.
And then it just kills a part of you, because like I know what that is.
Yeah. It's not even that, it's re-recording those.
Yeah. And you can kid yourself and think, well, I know it really well, the material really well now, but it's like, I've already done it. Well, it was done.
Yeah. My husband's a painter, and he hates that when going back over your work.
Yeah.
It feels like you're wasting 3 hours of my life I won't get back.
Yeah.
So what about you, BJ? So self-improvement wise, what would you like to accomplish or change or achieve or do? Or are you just kind of live in the moment kind of guy?
I mean, I'm like I said, I'm not super sharp, so I can think.
Stop saying that, BJ. I now deem you genius.
No, it's like, I'm not.
I don't care what your ego says. as according to me and the 499 other people on the Narrator's Cup of Joe, you are BJ the genius.
Yeah, genius is a very strong word. And I would never go that far. I'm also far from the king of anything, but
characterization.
Yeah, I would never go that far.
You started with the Muppets. I mean, that's hardcore.
Muppets. No, it's all uphill for it. Can only go up from there. So,
but the thing is, that's why we're here, because nobody wants to talk about themselves. I always have kickback. And now I don't even ask permission for the videos in the beginning, because I have so many people go, one of the narrators, I said she's like the princess of romance, or I said the queen of romance. She said, I'm not the queen. And so I did the video again. I said the princess of romance. She goes, I'm not the princess. I'm no kind of royalty.
There's no royalty involved.
It's I get it. It's hyperbole.
Yeah. But the point is, I can only think several steps ahead. Is the thing. So I know
you live in the moment.
Yeah. Maybe this moment, and maybe in a few months or maybe a year, but I don't go much further than that. I just try, and I know what I need to do. I'm working on these projects. I'm always working. My days are always full, of course. But as far as like, where do I see myself in 5-10 years? Honestly, the industry is changing so much. I'm just doing the very, very best that I can. Honestly, as long as I just keep improving and looking for more coaching, being critical, seeing, talking to fellow narrators, seeing what they're doing. I mean, just that's my sweet spot, is just kind of.
Do you think that comes from being a freelancer your whole life?
Yeah. I can totally think that it would, because you have to be bookable. And so you got to be sharp.
I love that. It took me a while working in corporate offices to make that mental switch. Now it's like, I think you have to prove to yourself that nothing bad will happen in 6 months. Just because you don't have control over it or know it, you'll deal with it. BJ will fix it.
Because I'm going to be there. I know. Yeah. And it's at this point, it's easy to look back and go, well, it's been really bad before, and we're still alive. We made it through.
I know. Like, we're seriously like superhuman now.
Yeah, it's like it's Alice falling off the thinking nothing of.
I've really got to look up that quote because I think I'm butchering it.
Oh, it's fine. I get it.
Yeah. So you'll never run out of classics, will you? Are you finding it hard to find ones that you haven't already done?
I was worried about that for a while, and it is. I mean, in the beginning, the world is your oyster. You know everything, but it's getting. There's more mining that needs to happen, but to counterbalance that, it makes it all the more satisfying when you do find something that's like, oh, I didn't even know this existed, and to find something that's incredible like that, it's like, oh my word, there's some amazing things, and a lot of things that are really seriously good writing we were just not exposed to in American schools, at least. A lot of stuff I'd never even heard of, but just like Arsène Lupin, I never even heard of that, but it's like incredible stuff. It's Sherlock Holmes leveled mystery I hadn't even heard of, and but in France it's a big deal. So
I wish I could do an Anaïs Nin, but she's not public domain. And also there's one, and I'm so embarrassed. Houston, I'm so embarrassed by this because it's a writer that I absolutely love. Stephen had to tell me who the writer was last time because I blank on his name every single time. But he's got a werewolf book written in 1930, and the publisher won't publish it but he had tried to get it published. Famous writer. Drinks a lot of alcohol, shoots animals, hates women.
Oh, Hemingway.
Yeah. Is it Hemingway?
It might be Steinbeck.
Yeah, no, I think it's Steinbeck. Yeah. And he did a werewolf book, but it's not going to be published. They tried to get them to publish it, but they won't do it because the estate said that he didn't want it published in the end. And Stephen said it wouldn't be public domain anyway, if the copyright was cleared now, even though it was an old book. But it's things like that. There's so many things out there that are like gold.
Well, like the London story, like the Scarlet Plague. It's well written. It's amazing. No one's heard of it. You think Jack London, Klondike, thank you for coming. You've got to build a fire. Don't waste my time, you know? And if don't show me a white fang, just keep that to yourself. You know, I mean, that's like that. But he wrote so much. He wrote science fiction. He wrote some great horror stories, but we just don't hear about it. We're like, you know. So anyway, I love finding stuff like that.
Yeah, I've wanted to do, and it's a pet project of mine. I've had the cover done for years, well, not years, I exaggerate, but finding time to do it has been a challenge, but I've actually put a book off, a paid book, because I'm finally going to finish the Scarlet Letter.
Oh, awesome.
Yeah, because
awesome.
I've got to use that cover. I mean, seriously. But I dreamt about it. I dreamt the cover. And I just I have to do the book. So, BJ, words of wisdom for our YouTube audience that's going to be watching this for 60 years. What would you like to leave them with? What do you wish they knew?
Well, we kind of already talked about it, but the main thing is get comfortable with failure. Look at the fear around failure, and don't be afraid to look at the things that are scary. Because after a while, after you do that process enough, once you get comfortable with failure, there's nothing to stop you. There's nothing in your way anymore. So
I like that. I might post that up in my booth to remind myself. Think about how much time you would save without all the mental chatter about whether or not you're going to fail.
We trip over ourselves too much. We get in our own way. We don't need to. It's hard to look at that. It's hard to get there, but it's worth it. It's worth it.
It might be hard, but we could also do it on a dime, couldn't we? We could all wake up tomorrow and say, what am I going to do today? What would I do if I wasn't afraid of failing?
Yeah.
We could all do it. Everyone on this call, we could do it tomorrow. What would we do? We'll do what BJ does. What would we do if we weren't afraid of failing tomorrow? I expect reports. I love that. I'm actually going to commit to that. I'm going to do something scary.
Awesome. Yes. Do one little thing that's scary that you normally wouldn't do.
I like that. I like that. I also like the birthday thing. I think it's a really good idea.
Oh yeah, that's a wonderful thing that we do. I mean, at the end of that, when you're like, sometimes we're just driving in the car, okay, let's play the birthday game. And then when we're driving to the restaurant that we're all going to or whatever, you know, boy, by the time we're there, it's like, there's just this beautiful feeling of the car, of love, of appreciation and everything. And then we get out and have a fun
I love that.
It's wonderful.
You remind me, there was someone famous, I can't remember where I heard it, but they said that their father, someone famous, I'm thinking the vice president, but I don't want to be quoted on that their father asked them at the dinner table to name one thing they'd failed at that day. And I do like that theme. I think that's brilliant.
Mm-hmm. Just breaking down that we're ruled by fear so much. It's just great to look at it and manage it and be in charge.
And just dive into it till our fingers get sticky with it. I like that. I do. Because think about how it's just like with the COVID thing, how strong we are. We've already dealt with our fears. Now we'll deal with any fear of failure and we'll be unstoppable.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, we've all come through this horrible thing. And now if something else similar like that happens, we're like, well, we've done that. We know what that's like. Now it's going to be even easier because we've done it once.
Yeah, it's nothing.
Same concept with everything.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. I like that. BJ, I've had a fabulous time. Thank you so much for taking the time to reach out and chat with us. And you've got such a lovely energy about you. You do. You're really like a calm. I bet you're a fabulous dad.
Oh, I love being a dad. I always wanted to be a dad when I was that 8-year-old boy. And I've loved being a dad to my wonderful kids.
I love that. I do. Everyone's saying thank you. I'll print up the chat for you. So you can read it later as well, and we'll have the recording out in a week. So yeah, you've got a very calm, because I joked with BJ when we got on this call that the universe was taking the piss out of me this week, that like what could go wrong was, and now I don't know about you guys, but I feel just like very zen. So take care of yourself.
Thank you so much. Thanks for having me on.
And we'll all check out your podcast. Is it okay if I link it on the recording?
That's fine, but it's just me reading. I mean, I don't know what you're expecting, but
we're expecting you reading. Can't wait to see it.
All right.
Thanks so much, BJ. BJ the genius, everyone.
Oh, that's that word again.
Take care. Bye, everyone. Thanks for joining. Thanks, BJ. Bye.
Come on, everybody, tap along. First you scrub a dub, then you tap and rub. You might have to yell when you hear the bell ring out loud and long. Oh, everybody scrub.